Right. So, yeah, many people told about this unusual setting for the stage, but when I was observing some of the speakers, I just realized that there is a massive halo just above us. So I guess every speaker has a chance of being an angel for 20 minutes. So now it's my turn, but what I really want to talk about is the media literacy and its impact on how the media content is actually being produced, and how do we ensure that the companies like Aktis, that is not necessarily the media company or the media literacy, can contribute to this process. And just on the example of the Baltic States, what we have actually achieved over the last 2 years when we did the project to support independent media in the Baltic States. So very briefly, just who am I? I'm Oleg, as you already know, the project coordinator of Actis Strategy, that is a British-based company that has operational platforms all across the world. And primarily, we gained our experience in fragile and conflict-affected states that are sort of arguably in a much kind of dire situation. So whether it's Ethiopia, Somalia, Libya, Syria, and so forth. But what we really seek to do is deliver impactful projects in the areas of good governance, media development, communications, and so forth. And media literacy in this way comes into play that now media literacy and the influence of disinformation and the lack of it is really the part of the national security discourse. So when we're talking about the sovereignty of states, and as a Ukrainian, I can vouch that poor media literacy may lead to the loss of territory. But also, this is something that is widely used by the authoritarian leaders, by the oligarchs, and the people with vested interests to their own advantage. So the less media literate people are, the easier it is to manipulate, the easier it is to change their behaviors in the ways that they want, but not necessarily that the audience wants to behave. And also something that may undermine the democratic values and principles. So something that we came about as a result of our work in the Middle East, in Africa, but also in Eastern Europe, particularly in the Baltic States, Ukraine, Moldova, was that trust and resilience to the information that people consume are the two pillars of good media literacy and good media environment in the country. And this is something that is really goes all the way to Roman Shutov's argument whether fact-checking and debunking myths and fake narratives is important. It is. However, the key goal of us is not just to kind of say, that's fake, but something that we can then trust to the other people who may produce and broadcast information and then realize whether it's true, false, and how much can we trust the source of information, and ultimately how robust we are as a society. So let's just talk about the Baltic States, because this is the case study that I really want to give you, because these three countries are relatively developed. They're members of the EU, members of NATO, but still a lot of the issues that we're going to talk about is similar to Ukraine, to Moldova, and to many other countries in the developed world as well. In the Baltic States in particular, and when you talk about Estonia and Latvia, there is a sizable Russian-speaking minority in both countries, less so in Lithuania, but still they are there. And they are increasingly isolated from the media environment in their spaces. So without any other alternative, the only way they can consume information in Russian is just getting from the Russian state-funded media, whether it's the RT, the Channel 1, and so many others. So that was the first sort of identified problem that, okay, these guys are operating in silos. They don't really have that much of a connection to the rest of their fellow citizens in Estonia and Latvia. And the media sector that it actually broadcasts in Russian in the Baltic States, quite fragmented, underdeveloped, and what is more important, people don't really speak in the same language across the different industries, whether it's the startup community, the media, both traditional and digital, the academia, and the expert community as well. So everybody uses their own language. They don't really want to talk to each other. Sometimes it's commercially driven, because they just need to get more money in grant programs. Sometimes it's just something that many don't realize that kind of creating together actually helps to solve some of the viable problems. So as a result of our initial research in the Baltic States that was mainly key informant interviews, going to the field missions and talking to the experts, there are three key challenges that we try to tackle with our support for independent media program. And the first one is that the independent media has to increase its audience reach. More people should consume independent media content to kind of understand the differences between the independent and biased content, but also kind of feel the need that they would want exactly this type of content. Improve trust and resonance of both the content and the source. So if you're consuming some channel that you actually trust the anchor, trust the source, and also would feel that you would want to share this information further with the other people and then further broadcast the message. And finally, the most important thing that I, coming from sort of now the corporate world, really wanted to emphasize with lots of our programs is how do we strengthen financial sustainability of all the media outlets that we work with. Because ultimately, we may have really bright ideas. We really want to support the local independent media outlets. However, if there is no sort of the next step or so what component, what is going to happen after the program, many of the independent media outlets would just foreclose, or they would then sell out to people with vested interest, undermining the whole goal of the project. So again, what we decided to do is address these challenges and issues via emphasizing innovation and sustainability of programs through three key strands or kind of channels of the program. One is really to provide some mentorship support and both financial and expert support to the local independent media outlets. So in this case, we can find some of the promising startup-based digital media outlets to develop and kind of with the potential to develop. The second issue is something that is really resonating with a GlobSec speaker about the digital outreach and working with the YouTube influencers and the people based online with a large following so that we can get some grassroots support and more authentic voice to any kind of idea that is part of the project. And finally, we really wanted to move away from the capital. So it's not just about Tallinn, not just about Riga, not just about Vilnius, but also about Narva, Daugavpils, Klaipėda, and so many other regional centers of these countries. The same way we try to approach the programs pretty much anywhere where we go to. We try to get away from the capital, get away from the donor darlings, as we used to say, those who get the financial support of the donors anyway, and focus more on those who have the potential but may either not know how to apply for these grants, or those who just are so understaffed they cannot really think strategically, and that's where we come in with some support. So as I told, the Baltic Media Accelerator was the engine and mechanism that we used throughout 2017 and 2020. 2018, and this is the sort of hands-on support for the media outlets that then, I'll just miss some of the research component and go straight to the hands-on work. And then what we did do is assembling a bunch of experts, both from the region and from the international scene, to provide the support and to provide especially the hands-on tailored mentorship for the media outlets. So the results are on the screen. So there were quite a lot of applications and 3 selected applicants. Here they are. So Nanuk in Lithuania, Hello Salank in Latvian Radio 4 in Estonia, both had quite innovative idea for a project that they want to develop. And we provided tailored mentorship, financial support, and the overall goal of it was to pitch the project during the final stages on the demo day, so that there is going to be members of the donor community and the private sector representatives who might get interested in the project and provide additional financing beyond the timeline of the project. And this way, we are trying to make it as financially sustainable as possible to get it kind of outside of the project. Just a very brief scheme, but I will share with you this presentation so you'll have a bit more time to get in detail. The results were quite significant, that the audience share increased for the local independent communities. there was much more positive feedback on the locally produced content. Hence, we realized that some of the things that both the local media outlets and the local influencers possessed are things that may link to the topics far away from the media literacy, but about education, generation, arts and culture, and those who you would discuss pretty much in everyday life. But what made them so appealing was authenticity. So these are the people who are living in these communities and who want to be part of the discussion, high engagement, so that those who consume the media would get their response, and the influencers and local media outlets would encourage dialogue instead of lecturing people as I do now. But also the sustainability component, that by working with like-minded producers, we can ensure that this is not our idea or the idea of the donor, but this is something that is going to survive much longer than just the project timeline. And just very briefly on the hyper-local context of our particular program, but also the approach that I would really encourage everybody to strive for is once we go out of the capital, there is so much more enthusiasm and kind of the drive to innovation, because many people didn't really experience anything like that that is sort of seen as a usual business in the capitals, whether it's media trainings, the mentorships, but also the hackathons that we had in Narva. And again, as one of the evidence of the financial sustainability of these products, there was an app called Short Walk Estonia that was a winner of the hackathon that we did last November, a year ago. And now it became a proper sort of business product that is being sold on the App Store and Google Play, and also these teams sort of developed their own business just out of the idea that received support in the right time, in the right place, because somebody actually cared to go to Narva and listen to these people. So at the end of the day, I just want to say thank you so much. And if you are the members of the media outlets and some of the initiatives from the regions, please do reach out to me, because something that we also hope we can help you with is to get in touch with some of the donors, but also link up together in the networks, both in your countries and also on the regional scale as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Questions? Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Would be better if people put it live. But else we can read them from Slido.
People are shy.
I do. It's okay.
Shyness, Franak?
Okay. Building a local
Digital
network.
literacy.
So I think there was a similar question before, and about what motivates people to actually be part of this network. I'm gonna be honest with you that at first the key motivation was monetary, that there was a financial reward to be part of the network, and the way how we sort of structured our work is obviously we guarantee editorial independence to any member of the community that is there. So you cannot dictate person to kind of say the West is great, Russia is terrible, or whatever idea you and I or the donor may have. This should be entirely up to the influencer to do. However, given the broad topics that we have under the Baltic Digital Platform, that's actually quite easy to do, because it provides another platform for the influencer to project its influence and product, but also it is an opportunity to meet more people outside of its kind of usual circle of communication, especially if there is an opportunity to meet with some internationals as well. So they actually quite appreciate that, and something that is really kind of should be beared in mind, that this is a long-term work. So in order to build a sustainable community like DCN as well, it takes some time to actually see the results of this network building. Thanks. So there is, can you guess how they try to increase audience reach? So there are some ways. Some of them are pretty basic, and this event uses them as well as the various hashtag campaigns, digital campaigns, and also since they are influencers already, quite a lot of them were capable of sort of fostering or igniting a flash mob as well. But the key point was what was the topic of these flash mobs. And there was a lot of the kind of discussions about the recycling waste and kind of the a lot of the topics linked to the ecology and to some of the kind of advanced practices of treating the media as well, sort of verifying facts. But all of them were quite in the kind of informal form, and all of them were quite short. So something that I just kind of take a 1 minute to say. We did an experiment of kind of fostering intergroup dialogue in Latvia. So there is one blogger whose name is Malvina, and as an experiment, she switched for a week from Russian to Latvian. Even though she's a Russian speaker, she knows Latvian because she lives in the country, but obviously her Latvian not as good as of the native speaker. But the amount of positive feedback that gathered because somebody actually tried to do that and tried to kind of break this barrier of the Russian speakers and the Latvian speakers showed that first it was in demand, people actually responded quite positively, but also it fostered more online dialogue on the kind of language issues, on the ways that actually we are not so different from each other and we can talk to each other and kind of do some things together. But online in this case provides this neutral platform that you don't need to engage face-to-face first, and then if you want to do something together, it's much easier and gradual process to do that. So again, media in this case is a tool for a much wider social purpose of changing behaviors and making sure that people trust each other. And in this case, it's going to be much harder to fool them with disinformation. I think that's it, or not?
I have additional question here. In the beginning of your presentation, you mentioned that the main reason why people watch Russian state television is because of lack of Russian language content, local. But I'm afraid that it's not 100% truth. Of course,
sure.
if you offer local and hyper-local content, they will consume it. But sad truth is that they watch Russian state television because of the quality. Russian state television provides high-quality entertainment content. And until if you want them to stop watching Russian state television, you need to provide equal level of the content outside Russia. Because on world market, there is a lot of Russian language content. It's not a problem. People watch Russian state television not because they want to consume propaganda news. Not at all.
Yeah, sure.
So competition is not in news and language. Competition is slightly different. And
if I can just address your question very quickly, and I won't take too much of your time, guys. But first, I agree that there is some Russian content in the Baltic States, from ETV Plus in Estonia, LTV7 in Latvia, and some of the other outlets based in the Baltic States. So no doubt about that. It's not just nil information. And second, I agree with you that the Russian media content is obviously of the higher quality because there is more money spent on this content. Again, completely agree. However, where I differ is that quality, regardless of how impactful it is delivering much less impact than actual engagement and interaction on the local issues that people care about on the ground. So something that obviously we cannot spend that much money as RT spends on its own budget. But what we can do is to provide much more opportunities for the people to feel that they are not just viewers and consumers, but they are creators of content as well, alongside with the journalists, with the editors. And that's where online provides many more opportunities than, let's say, TV does, because you just consume whatever is being broadcasted to you. So whereas I completely agree with you that quality is important, what our programs sought to achieve and what we are trying to kind of get further down the line is that the more engagement there is in communication between the groups, Latvians and Russians, let's say, but also within the Russians that they feel more part of the local community through the dialogue, through some of the content that is tailored specifically to them. And in this case, I believe that that could be a viable competition for some great content of Channel 1 in Russia.
So basically the solution is to engage them locally.
Precisely, yes. Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think you've stayed quite a while on the chair.